I happened to notice, or really more accurately, my wife informed me that a first class stamp is now 95p. So it's the best part of a pound. Depending on how much you're paying for your card, you could be paying hundreds of pounds to send Christmas cards. And I'm sure there's all sorts of ways by which Royal Mail and economists and experts on inflation would explain how such a situation has come to pass, that it's now 95 pence for a first class stamp. But it seems to me that it's just yet another way in which our connections with one another are being affected and limited by technology. Because obviously the allure of sending a free email or a free, I don't know, a WhatsApp or a text, instead of writing out a card and putting it in an envelope and writing out the envelope and putting on a stamp for 95 pence and taking it to a letterbox, convenience has trumped all, hasn't it? And we now just send out these electronic messages. So we've become dependent upon technology for one more thing. And I don't know, on the one hand it strikes me as a sad state of affairs, but there's also that nagging sense that if we are dependent upon big tech for all of our communications, then all of it can be supervised, overseen, surveilled, intercepted, snooped on. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Anything that's moving electronically in that way can be seen by others. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Whereas, you used to be able to put something in the Royal Mail, put it in an envelope, and consign it to the Royal Mail, and it was holy, it was sacred, untouchable. As soon as you let go of it in the letterbox, you weren't allowed to get it back. It went into that system, and it was not to be tampered with until it went into the hands of the addressee, and the addressee would then have the unique privilege of opening that mail. And even now, if you interfere with mail, it's a serious crime. But there was something sacred about that transaction. You could I don't know, commit words to paper and put it in an envelope and send it, and know that no one was going to see it except the person to whom you had addressed the envelope. And that matters somehow. And if we let that go, or if it's priced out of the market, if it just becomes uneconomic to do something as simple as send a letter in that way, then it's yet another way in which big tech has got inside our heads and can take advantage of intercepting and knowing, keeping record somewhere of who sent what to whom and when. And I find there's something deeply distressing about that. The mail, snail mail as it's pejoratively described now, was something special. When the Cullinan diamond was discovered in 1905 in South Africa in one of the mines, it was the biggest diamond in the world, and they decided to make a gift of it to King Edward, and there was a big song and dance about it being put inside a strong box, and the strong box being loaded onto a steamship, and a team of armed guards protecting it round the clock, 2 men on, 2 men off, all the way to Southampton or Portsmouth or whatever, and then it was loaded onto the back of a vehicle, and then it was taken again under armed guard to Buckingham Palace, where it was revealed that was a ruse, that the diamond had not been sent like that. It was a decoy. That was a fake that was sent that way, and the real Cullinan diamond was sent by the post. It was sent by parcel post, because nobody was looking. Everybody was looking at the steamship and the guards with the rifles, somebody, basically the Cullinan diamond was just popped in the mail, and it arrived safe and well. There was something magical about the way in which anything up to and including a diamond being sent to Edward VII could just be entrusted to the mail, and everybody, the people involved knew that was the safest way to do it. And there's something about the loss of that, watching that wither on the vine, just strikes me as sad. And then you move on from that to thinking about the way in which everything is text now. Everything is typed, on a keyboard, or it's put in on the keyboard on your phone. But everything goes as text, and nobody writes. I looked up. There'll be something more recent, but something I found, there was a survey of 2,000 people in June 2014, and 1 in 3 of the people who responded to the survey had not written anything by hand in the previous 6 months. That was in 2014. Okay, so this is 8 years later, and we can only imagine it's declined further. On average, the respondents had not put pen to paper in the previous 41 days. And then if you look elsewhere, cursive writing, you joined up writing, as we used to call it at school. That kids don't even get taught that in most schools now. It's no longer regarded as an essential tool, and it's not part of the core of the curriculum anymore, and more it's being regarded as just a matter of fact that everyone, kids included, will just type. They'll just input, and that interests me at the same time, because I when I was a cub reporter, when I was learning to be a journalist, when would that be? It was in the 1990s, and my editor at the paper that I was at, he had us all learn how to touch type. And I can touch type. I can do about 60 or 70 words a minute. And it amazes me that although kids at school are expected to type, they don't teach them to do that. They don't get taught touch typing. Which makes me think that everyone's just waiting for the technology to get to the point where you just talk to your computer and it just transfers your spoken word onto text on the screen. I can only imagine, because no one's being taught to touch type. So there's that move away. And actually, when you look into it, psychologists and neuroscientists are very interested in what happens in the difference between writing and typing. And it turns out that writing, actually making letters on the page, and typing, they're completely different in terms of the cognitive process and the way in which your brain interacts with either or. There was research carried out by a couple of French researchers, and they looked at 76 children aged between 3 and 5, and half of them were taught to learn writing letters by hand, and the others were taught just to input using a keyboard into a computer. And the group that learned to make the shapes with their hand, with a pencil or whatever, were then better at recognising words than the kids that learned only to input from a keyboard, as though the mechanical process of hand writing and representing the letter yourself physically on the page fired different synapses and different neurons in a different part of your brain, and it meant that you were better at recognising words. And then they repeated the experiment with adults, and so they took, say, adults that were used to the English alphabet, and they had them look at foreign alphabets, Bengali or Tamil or other scripts, and they got the same results again. So it wasn't just in kids aged 3 to 5, even adults, if they learned to make the shapes by handwriting, they were then better at reading and recognising the shapes later on. And I can remember, I was thinking about this, and years ago at a book festival, I met Willie McIlvanney, a Scottish author that wrote the Laidlaw books. And they were very famous at the time, and then not long before he died, they were kind of rediscovered, and they were all republished. The titles all came back out again with new covers on the books and everything. And I spent an hour or so with Willie McIlvanney, and he asked me about how I wrote, and I said, well, I type, and he said that he still wrote in longhand, and the words that he used, he said, I carve every letter into the page. He talked about it being a real physical engagement between himself and the unforgiving blank page. He was actually, leaning into the page to create it, and that's obviously a different process than just typing into a keyboard. And so I wonder at what it all means. Apart from worrying about the fact that now increasingly all of our communications are happening in such a way that they can be looked into, intercepted, supervised, snooped on, and surveilled. Apart from that, I do wonder about the way in which we're just being affected by, and I'm not being a Luddite about this, I'm not automatically saying that one is lesser and the other is more. I'm not saying that. I just wonder at the difference it will make over the longer term if let's say we lose writing and we only input data via a keyboard. I just wonder what the consequences of that will be. And there's something about me, I'm always drawn back to thinking about, I suppose, what you describe as analogue. Everything at the moment, all comms, all technology is digital. And digital is completely different from analogue. If you look at a clock, an analogue clock, with the 12 figures and the two hands, that's a visual representation of the time. It's not showing you the passage of time. It's showing you something that looks like the passage of time. It's an analogy, literally, for the passage of time. In the same way that if you've got an electric meter and the needle moves further and further round because the current is stronger and stronger and stronger, it's showing you an analogy of the physical process. And analog and digital are fundamentally different. In digital, whatever it is, the sound, the image is turned first of all into zeros and ones, and they're sent by a radio wave to the receiver, and then they're decoded at the other end to produce the picture or the sound. It's profoundly different, and people are still attracted to analog. Some people either give up analog and go back to it, or some people cling on to it and never let it go. But people are still listening to vinyl records. They're still listening to cassettes. That's magnetized patches on a plastic tape, but it's still analog, and real film in cameras rather than digital cameras. Some people are still using that. So there's a tendency for the human to cling on to analog in some strange way. It always makes me think of in Goodfellas, the head of the crime syndicate, and he won't use the phone. He sends lackeys to random phone boxes out in the street and has them make calls on his behalf, and then they come back with the information and they whisper it into his ear, so that nobody gets to hear it except Big Tony getting this information directly into his ear. He won't even make a telephone call because he's suspicious of the possibility of his comms being intercepted by the police. And there's people that retain. What he wanted to do was just talk to people one to one, just transmit information in the most analog means of all. Vibrating the air in between your face and somebody's ear. That's really what's happening when you talk. I wonder at what it will all mean if we allow this fundamental shift. Obviously, writing has been through any number of changes. It seems to have been invented in Mesopotamia 4,000-5,000 years ago, and it started out with people using a blunt end on a reed to make shapes into a wet clay tablet. And they formed the cuneiform alphabet and wrote using that, and then it developed. Then you've got the Phoenician alphabet later, and then you've got paper around the time of the birth of Christ. The Chinese invent paper. Then you've got the first codex, which is when someone took handwritten pages and bound them together into a book. That's a codex. And then you get the inventing of printing in the 15th century, and then you get the ballpoint pen in the 1940s. And now we've got the internet. So writing in that way has been through one revolution after another. And what's happening now, you might justifiably say, is just another stage in that long and inevitable process. But there's something to me about losing that physical connection. And I know that when I receive a letter, I get a lot of letters, and at the moment I'm getting more and more. I have half a dozen Christmas cards today from people who I don't directly know, But people send me these letters addressed to the Coast guy and the guy off the telly and whatnot, and they all find their way to my address. And every single one of those cards and every single one of those letters, and most of them are handwritten, they affect me profoundly. And it's in no small part because I know that somewhere, someone who's never met me has taken an hour or longer to sit down and write to me, making the letters, making the words. And then they fold up the bit of paper and they put it in an envelope, and they often draw pictures on the envelope, something funny, and they come up with a funny variation on my address, and it comes to me, and it's a unique and personal communication. It's strictly between me and them. No one else shares that message except the person that writes it to me, and then when I open the letter or open the card. And I've kept all of them. Now, I don't keep any emails. I receive thousands, and we all do. You receive thousands. I don't receive. I spend most of my time deleting. Just delete. I'm not keeping any of it. And I don't. It's same with text messages. I don't keep them. They all just go. And I do think that there'll be something profound when finally the last Christmas card is sent and received, and that long tradition is over. And once again, some small tradition that has been part of our lives for hundreds of years will just have gone, and we will have surrendered another little aspect of our lives to big tech. It's convenience. Always it's convenience. We have as a species surrendered more and more in the name of convenience. To write a letter by hand or to write a Christmas card, you've got to go and buy the Christmas card, you've got to stand in a queue and pay for it and take it home and write it out, think what to write it out, put it in the envelope, put a stamp on it, put the address on it, take it to the post office or to a letterbox. All of it's an investment of time. And, increasingly we're looking for what, the scientists call cognitive automaticity, which it means it's the ability to think as fast as possible, which is to say that when you start typing, you can get further ahead of your thoughts than you can if you're writing. So the faster you can commit your thoughts and get it down somewhere, it gives you more time to think because you're using less time in the physical creation of the message. It's speeding up the amount of time you have left over for thinking. So there's a logical reason to desire it, but we're being offered the tools to save all of our time, all of this convenience. But always remember what is rapidly becoming an adage that's so often repeated, it's becoming a cliche. If it's free, you're the product. We absolutely know that the fourth industrial revolution and all the rest of it is about our data. That's what it's all about. That is the stock in trade, and the price that the technocrats are paying for it is giving us for free the tools, and then we just go, that's fantastic, and we just communicate using these technological tools, and we give up our privacy. These libertarians, they don't believe in privacy. They're offended by the very thought of other people having privacy. Bizarrely, they're some of the most, you'd say possibly the most secretive people on the planet. Your Zuckerbergs and your Peter Thiels that are behind all of this stuff. But it annoys them that people would contemplate or would retain a desire to maintain their privacy. Why can't they look inside our heads? That's why Elon Musk is coming up with the neural link that Klaus Schwab is so interested in, because that way they'll actually be literally be inside our heads. And they sell it to us because they say, we'll be teaching the lame to walk, and the quadriplegics will get up out of their beds and walk again, and the blind will see because of the neural link. Yeah, maybe, possibly, but it will also create an open door into our consciousness. And we're trading all this stuff away just because we think that we're going to be given a more convenient way to do things. If it's free, you're the product.